Hey guys, thank you for being here with me today. I'm just going to wait a few minutes, see if anybody pops on. Here we go. Yeah. Hey guys. So in this video today, in this live today, we're going to be talking about who exactly God is and why God, who exactly God is and why the universe was created. Okay, we're going to talk about who exactly God is, why the universe was created, what are the signs that God is with you so that you'll know that when you are in God's presence, and why do bad things happen um, in the world, right? Why does God let bad things happen to certain people, to everybody, right? We all have bad things happen to us. Why does God let bad things happen to us and the planet and the world, right? We're going to talk about that as well in this video in this live today. All right. And I'm also going to answer questions if you have them. So I'm going to answer your questions at the end of the live. So feel free to pop those questions in throughout the live. And because, I'll answer questions about this or any other topic as well. So, but we'll do that after we talk about stuff today. So and I just want to preface beforehand, this is not a religious video. Okay, so you can belong to any religion and still receive this information because we're talking about energy in this video, in this live. We're talking about what is the energy of God. Okay, and this can apply to no matter what religion you belong to. It will apply because we're not talking about God on a religious level. We're talking about what is the energy of God and what is the energy of the universe and why the universe was created on an energetic level. Okay, so I just want to say that beforehand, because I know there's a lot of people that have different faiths and everything. And so, like I said, we're talking about energy here. And so I just wanted to say hi to some people. Hi, Tyler. I see Tyler is here. Yay. And Tracy's here. And Anna's here. And Luscious Living today is here. Good to see you guys. And Darina's here. Wonderful. Great to see you guys. Thank you for showing up with me, for being here with me today. So this is a complicated topic, and it is. I'm going to break it down for you because numerology reveals exactly. If we look at the numbers of numerology, it kind of explains everything and makes it very simple as to who exactly God is, and why the universe was created, and what is the energy of God? The numbers reveal all of this. So we're going to talk about that. Um, the first thing I wanted to say is that when we think of the universe, we need to think of shapes. Okay, so think of everything in the universe is created in through shapes, geometry. Okay, this is called sacred geometry, and sacred geometry is actually what the whole entire universe is created with, right? And so when we look at numbers, the numbers are just connections to those sacred shapes that created the universe. So when we're thinking of God and the universe, the easiest way to see it is that God is basically think of the universe as a sphere. Okay, now the shapes in the universe that have the highest dimension or that are the highest level in terms of their energy are spheres. Okay, spheres are perfect in every element, and there's like a perfect symmetry with spheres. So anytime you see a sphere, any being or anything that is of a sphere, that is going to be a complete being that is very high vibrational, that has reached its final stage of evolution. Okay, so when we think of, like, for instance, the celestial beings, the planets, the sun, and those all have a sphere shape. And so we know that the planets, the celestial beings, the planets, as well as the sun, the stars, these are actually highly evolved beings. Okay, they're even higher in terms of evolution. They're higher um, than like archangels in terms of their evolution because they're a sphere shape. Okay, now when it comes to the universe, there's no such thing as hierarchy. Okay, because every stage of evolution is equal. Okay, so there's no hierarchy. But what God really is, who, and I'm going to be referring to God as a he, but just know that God is he and she, okay? Because I know that there's some people that kind of get offended when you refer to God as he, but God is definitely he and she for sure. But I'm just in this live, I'm going to be referring to God as a he because that's how I feel comfortable referring to God, okay? But God is basically when the universe was created, God was this perfect sphere, right? God, think of a sphere and think of the sphere becoming awake and aware of itself. Okay. And in that moment that this perfect sphere became aware of itself, who I am, I exist, in that perfect moment, we see a shattering of this sphere. Think of this, like a giant ball, right? And think of the universe, God, becoming aware of that that it exists, right? It's becoming aware of itself. And in that moment, that perfect ball, that perfect sphere, shattering into trillions and trillions and infinity an infinite number of pieces. Okay. um Now scientists refer to this as the Big Bang. Okay, but what the Big Bang really was is it's the awareness, the God becoming aware, that's perfect sphere becoming aware of itself, becoming aware of who it is, who I am, right, who he was. And we see a shattering of that sphere breaking into millions and millions of pieces. Okay, this is the universe basically. It's just that sphere, okay, broken into millions and millions of an infinite number of pieces, a scattering of those pieces. um and so what um and so everything in the universe is just one of those pieces, right? We see that when God, this perfect sphere, broke itself into millions of pieces, an infinite number of pieces. And the universe, everything in the universe is basically just one of those pieces of the sphere that broke off. Okay. And in the breaking of those, the shattering of the sphere into an infinite number of pieces, the 9 dimensions were created. Okay. The 9 dimensions were created in order for God to experience itself and learn about itself. Okay. And we're going to talk about those a little bit, but all evolution is this is the whole purpose of us being alive, why the universe even exists. The whole purpose is trying to get those pieces back together again. That's it. That's I mean, in a nutshell, that's why we exist, and that's why the universe exists, because we're just trying to get all of those little pieces that broke off and fractured off, into an infinite number of pieces. We're just trying, the universe, God is just trying to get those pieces back together again into the sphere that it is, that God is. That's what God is. That's the universe. It's just a sphere broken off into millions and trillions and billions of pieces. And all evolution is the process of us bringing back those pieces of the sphere back together again so we can have that perfect sphere again, right? And the process of us doing that is perfection, right? Everything is perfect because the process of us getting those pieces back together again and creating the sphere of God, as a whole, right, in the universe, um, that's a perfect process, right? But some people, I mean, Spirit is showing me that in some sense it was not really meant to happen. It was kind of an accident that the universe was created is what I'm being shown. That it, that it's not something God was it just happened. It was kind of a mistake, if anything. But in that process of God coming back together in evolution and all of these pieces in the universe coming back together again to create the sphere, um, that is that is a process that we're going through, and that's why we exist, basically, and that's why we're here. And think of it as like, like that nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty. Remember Humpty Dumpty? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men try to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. So that's kind of what it is. That's it in a nutshell. Is God, Humpty Dumpty sitting on the wall, the egg, the sphere. In this case, it would be, an egg. In the nursery rhyme, it would be an egg, but God is the sphere, fell off the wall, broke, and now we're just trying to get Humpty Dumpty back together again and bring those pieces back together again to create the sphere again. And basically, that's why you always hear people saying that love is the most important thing in the universe. Okay. You remember, when I was younger, I never really could understand this. I kind of thought that it meant, oh, okay. Oh, you just want to be, love is so, it feels good and it feels wonderful. And that's why it's the most important thing in the universe, because it feels good, right? What love really is, it's the connection it's the glue that brings those little fractured pieces of the sphere back together again. Okay. Because basically, we are in basically we're until those pieces of the sphere come back together again, we're in separation. Okay. And in the dimension that we're in the third dimension, we're in the greatest form of separation, where the pieces are, where we really feel the most separation from the pieces. And all of the pieces in the higher dimensions, and some of the, like I said, there's no hierarchy, but in some of the higher dimensions, there's an awareness that all of the pieces of the sphere are actually the same, and that the sphere is in, those pieces are trying to come back together again to create uh, the sphere, right? To come back together and create the universe, and bring back God to the I am state, right? The initial state of being. So basically, we're in this dimension that we're in, the third dimension. We're in the dimension of just seeing everything as being separated, and love is basically those pieces coming together again and connecting again. So it's like the glue that brings those pieces together again so that they can connect, join back together, and bring back that sphere that got shattered, basically. Okay. So that's why you always see spiritual people saying that love is the most important thing in the world. Oh, thank you for the super chat, world class syndicate. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. But that's why you hear a lot of spiritual people saying that, love is the most important thing in the world. It's not that they're trying to be like, super positive or super, like trying to, it's nothing like that. It's like an energetic phenomenon, that love is just a synonym for the glue that brings the pieces of the universe back together again to create the sphere that got shattered and broken. And so now when we look at numerology, how does numerology help us to understand this? It's kind of a complex, uh, thing that we're talking about here, right? So the numbers really help us to understand this, because basically the numbers represent all of those little pieces that got broken off and shattered, into an infinite number of that are scattered out in the universe. The numbers represent one of those pieces. Okay, so like for instance, um, when we look at when we look at humans, right? But this can be anything too, because anything that has a birthday has a life path number. Okay, so everything really has a number. And so all of those everything in the universe has a number, and when you add all of those numbers together, 1 through 9, and as well as the master numbers, okay? But now master numbers are really just variations of other numbers, basically. But when you add all of those numbers together, 1 through 9, you get 0. 0 represents God, okay? And 0 is that it's like I said, at the highest level, the shapes that are spheres are actually the most evolved, right? So when we add all the numbers together, we get 0. And 0 is God representing that sphere, like I said. So when we think of 0, when we break 0 up and shatter it into a bunch of pieces, you get the individual numbers. Coming back to God is when we take all of those numbers and we add them together, 1 through 9, and that equals God, right? Which is represented by the 0, and similar to the sphere. So what that means is that those, in terms of the physical world that we live in, you are a piece of God. Okay, and I've said this before in many of my videos, that you are just a fractal of God's source energy. Okay, you're one of those pieces that broke off from the sphere. You know, when the Big Bang happened, or that's what science calls it, is the Big Bang. But um, you're just one of those pieces. You're one of those fractals of the sphere that broke off, and that is represented by your number, your life path number, 1 through 9. You're going to be one of those numbers, and we add all those numbers together, we get 0. And 0 represents it's God, it's the right, it represents the universe, it's the void. It's 0 is very interesting because 0 means it's when we think of mathematics, 0 is nothing, right? It represents nothing, but it also represents everything too. So, and that's kind of what God is, when we're talking about the sphere, it is everything in the universe and also nothing at the same time. Um, so that's how numerology helps us to figure out exactly, um, in terms of the sphere that I'm talking about that broke off into an infinite number of pieces. It helps us to think of that at a level, an earthly level, is to think of it as that, okay, you might be like, for instance, you might be like a life path number 5, and maybe your friend is like a life path number 6, and then you have a friend that's a life path number 3, and then if you add all those numbers together, and then you we get 0, right? We get God. And so that just represents you as a fractal of God source energy. So a lot of people are not aware of this, okay? That they are, and I've talked about this before in many videos, that you're a fractal of God, basically experiencing the third dimension. So God create, like I said, when the sphere broke off into many pieces, it created the 9 dimensions. And um, God, the source energy, the largest part of source energy is living in the ninth dimension. Okay, that would be, um, and there. By the way, there are more than 9 dimensions. Um, there are there are 9 dimensions that humans need to be, that really apply to humans, that we need to be aware of. There are more dimensions than that, but in terms of our understanding and what is important to us, we'll just say that there's 9 dimensions, okay? And God is basically the largest part of source energy, is living in the ninth dimension. But God wanted to experience the universe, wanted to like I said, when that sphere broke off into an infinite number of pieces, it basically had happened because it wanted to experience itself. And like I said, um, from my understanding, it wasn't expected. It wasn't expected to happen, but it ended up happening. And so it happened. Yeah, basically, you can call it kind of like, see it as kind of a mistake, but it was a beautiful mistake, because in that process of it being a beautiful mistake, now God is learning about itself, basically. Okay. God is learning about himself through you. And so you, like I said, you are a fractal of one of those pieces that broke off from the sphere. And you're the eyes and the ears of God in the third dimension. You're how he experiences the third dimension. And um, in other dimensions, like for instance, like when we get to well, yeah, we'll talk about the fifth dimension. Fifth dimension is like the dimension of like your spirit guides, right? Your spirit guides live in the fifth dimension. God is experiencing the fifth dimension through your spirit guides. He is the eyes and ears in the fifth dimension. The spirit guides are his eyes and ears. In the sixth dimension, the archangels are that sixth and seventh dimension. The archangels are the eyes and the ears of God, and that's how he experiences the sixth dimension and the seventh dimension. He is experiencing, oh, in the eighth dimension, we have the dimension of the Akashic records. Okay. And that's how God experiences the eighth dimension. Now, in the third dimension, he's experiencing it through you. So you are a piece of God, you are a fractal of God, and you know that because you're a number. You have a life path number. And so that's just an indication that, okay, yeah, you're one of those pieces. You might have forgotten about it, you might have forgotten about it down the road, and because of the veil is very thin or very thick in this third dimension. But at a higher level, your soul knows that you are a piece of God, and you are basically how God experiences the third dimension. You're part of it, okay? But when we think about the universe, like I said, God is everything in the universe, right? Because God is um, a piece of, everything in the universe is a piece of that sphere that broke off from, that shattered. So everything in the universe, and then it is part of God, basically. And when we put those, like I said, when we put those pieces back together and through love and through the glue that brings those pieces back together, then we you know, it's like bringing that sphere back together. So that's how we know that everything in the universe is a piece of God. Now, that means that the good and the bad is also part of God too. And so if you think about it, like, in, um, in terms of like some of these religions um, that like their philosophies about things that are negative and things that are in the dark, right? If you think about it, in God's universe, if God is so powerful, why would God even allow that to happen, right? Why would God even, if God is so powerful and why would he even allow negativity and things to happen? Couldn't he just instantly erase it like that if he wanted to? It's because that is also part of God as well. The negative things that happen as part of the learning process. Okay, this is how God is experiencing himself and how he's learning about himself, and how there's expansion, and really it's not really expansion, it's just experience. Okay, it's just because God doesn't need to expand, but really it's just God wanted to experience the good and he wanted to experience the bad. Okay. And so that is the third dimension that we are in. It's the dimension of duality, in which there's good and then there's bad in this dimension. And the the bad basically happens to help us to it helps us on a physical level. It helps us to expand our souls. Okay, so think of, like, for instance, like when you take, like, I'm always given the example of like when you take a diamond, right, and you put a lot of pressure on it. What happens to the diamond? Or sorry, when you take a piece of coal, you put a lot of pressure on it. What happens to the piece of coal? It turns into a diamond, right? It's the same thing when you're going to the gym and you're building muscle. In order to build muscle, you have to break muscle down first. Okay, so that negativity and those bad things that happen in the world is a form of contraction, so that we can have expansion and get more quickly back to the sphere, basically. Because that's the whole point of evolution is we're just trying to get those pieces, like I said, Humpty Dumpty, right? We're trying to get the pieces of the sphere back together again. That's the whole point of evolution. The sphere got broken, it's shattered into a million pieces, and we're just trying to get it all back to the sphere that it used to be before it got shattered and broken. So the contraction, the negative things that happen on the planet, that happen in your life, that happen in the world, that helps accelerate the evolution so we can get back to the sphere faster. Okay. So um here's a better analogy. Okay. Think of it as like a rubber band. What happens when you take a rubber band and you pull it back? Right? When you take a rubber band, normally if you were to flick a rubber band, it would fly, it would go somewhere. But if you were to take the rubber band and actually pull it back, it's going to shoot out even faster and it's going to get to where it needs to go even faster because you're taking it and you're putting all this pressure on it and pulling it back. And so when you pull it back, then it you know it expands and it goes it goes to where it needs to go even faster, three times as fast, even more, right? So think of it that way. So whenever there's more contraction, whenever there's more negative things, bad things that happen, think of it as a faster way to get to evolution or a faster way to evolve and a faster way to get back to the sphere coming back together again and being whole again, basically. Okay. So, when we think of like, people's like, well, what, a lot of people think of this, right? A lot of people ask questions. Why does God let such horrific things happen on the planet? Like, and we just had the Epstein files that got released. If you haven't checked out my video about that, I'll link it below, but a lot of you guys already knew about stuff that was in the Epstein files because you guys are very like awake and you're very aware of this stuff. Um, and you've been watching my channel for a while, so a lot of you guys, but there's a lot of people that had no idea about any of the stuff that was in the Epstein files, right? It's just a complete shock to them. And and it's going to get even worse too. There's a lot of stuff in there that's even worse that hasn't been uncovered yet. So um this is just kind of like the beginning of some of the stuff that's coming out, but it gets even darker and it gets even more negative. Okay, so you guys got to protect yourselves. You know, ask for the archangels to come in and protect you. Michael's a really good one. Crystals really help with protection against negative energy as well. And then I give some ideas about how to protect yourself on an energetic level in my video that I did. So definitely check that out. Okay. Um, but like for instance, that's just an example of why some of the horrific things that happen on the planet, and everyone's just like, why on earth would God let that happen, right? um some of the religions believe that you know um that this is another entity that's causing this, right? That Satan or whatever is causing these bad things to happen. That's what some of the religions would believe. But on an energetic level, it's happening because it's that rubber band is being pulled backwards so that in the process of it being pulled backwards, it can shoot out even further and we can evolve and get back all of those pieces of the sphere that got broken back together again so the sphere can come back together again. Okay, on a very deep level, that's what's happening. Contraction, the more contraction you have, the greater the expansion you have. Okay. And um, so we come down here, we are born, we have these spirit plans with certain individuals, certain spirits that, I'm going to play this part and you're going to play that part. I'm going to be the good guy, you're going to be the bad guy. And we play out these roles with each other because if when we have a villain in the play, when we're playing out a role with somebody that's going to cause us a lot of friction or going to cause our rubber band to be pulled back really, really far, then that's just going to shoot us out even further, right? And we're going to go even farther, and that's going to help us with our evolution, so we can get that sphere back together again. That sphere that got broken. That's what it's all about. And so so on an energetic level, the people in our lives that cause us the most pain, these are soul contracts that we have. We planned it out before we were born, that we would play out these roles, and that this person was going to cause a lot of, friction, pulling back my rubber band. And then in the next lifetime, to balance that out, I'll do the same for you. That's usually what happens. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why God lets bad things happen on the planet. And we see it as bad because in the third dimension, we put labels on everything, and everything is dualistic, is either bad or good, light or dark. But the universe doesn't do that. The universe just sees it as all part of, the process of getting the sphere back together again, that sphere that got broken. Okay. Getting all the numbers, because that's what it is, all the numbers combined together so it can equal zero again. We got to get back to zero. And so it can, and this can be a hard thing to swallow, like I said, especially when horrific things are being shown to the world. Like, for instance, what has happened in the Epstein files. These are horrific things that have happened in our eyes, but the universe doesn't see it that way. The universe is like, oh no, that rubber band just got pulled back. Instead of just, a little bit, that rubber band got pulled back a lot. And so now that person that went through that horrible thing, torture, trafficking, like, all, it's just awful, the things that are in those files, right? And it's going to, like I said, it's going to get even darker and worse, the things that are going to come out. Okay. So some of the more darker things are already coming out, but it's going to get, and this will eventually be shown to the whole, like, it's going to be very visible. It's not just going to go away. It'll be very visible, the things that are in there. And we're in a one universal year, and one is all about ruled by the sun, and the sun is sunlight. And the sunlight is, when everything is in the sunlight, everything is revealed, right? So that's what we're in the energy of right now. We're in the energy of the sun, and the sun shines light on everything. So yeah, we're in new earth now. So everything is going to get revealed, even the darkest things that are in those files that some people would never in a million years believe, like, cannibalism, that kind of thing, that's all going to come out. And we see it as horrific. But like I said, the universe is just looking at it like, okay, that rubber band got pulled back so far for those people that went through those horrific things, that now it's just going to go, it's going to accelerate so much now. It's going to accelerate and go even further now as a result of that. And that person is going to have a lot of evolution, right? We see it as evolution, but the universe is just seeing it as getting the pieces back together again to create that zero, to create that sphere. Now, so now, what are the signs that God is with you? There's always going to be signs, because, well, you are God, right? You are a fractal of God. You are a piece of God. You are God's eyes and ears in the third dimension. Never forget that, okay? Never forget that. Because when you are not aware of that, you put other people on a pedestal. You think that other people are better than you. You might, like celebrities or famous people, you might put people on a pedestal, people that have money or influence or whatever, just because they're more visible than you. They're just as equal in terms of their fractal of godness as you are, like, there's no piece or chunk of the sphere that is more than the other. We're all equal, and we are all fractals of God. So never forget that. You are always, you have so much power because of this, because of you being you're a spiritual being in a human body, and you are a fractal of God, and you have so much power because of that. The only reason we don't realize this is because humanity has put so many limitations on itself, that people are not aware of their power, and they don't believe in their power. But really, anything is possible because of this. in the future, you're going to see humans that can do all kinds of things, because humans in the future will become aware of their power, that they are fractals of God, and you're going to see them doing all kinds of things like, levitating and, you know, you know, small things like, psychic abilities, ESP, and being able to, channel spirit. Like, yeah, that's obvious that in the future humans will be able to do that stuff. But the less obvious things is you're going to see humans even being able to do things like levitate and, you know, um, because like I said, you are a fractal of God. You're God in the third dimension. So there is nothing that you cannot do. There's not, like I said, there is really nothing. The rules that we have created are just rules that humanity has created um, to keep itself in a prison because it's in such separation from, you know, like I said, those pieces of the sphere coming back together again to create the sphere. It's at like the level of, or it has been for many centuries. It has been at the level of very fractaled, as far away from the sphere coming back together again as possible. But as humanity wakes up, now that we are in this new era, we are in the age of, we're in new earth now. We just entered it. We've been in this process of switching over for the past, you know, few years, for the past decade. And now we solidly have entered this new cycle, this new era for humanity. And so people are going to become aware of this and their power is going to become unlimited. You'll be shocked, you know, well, if you incarnate here in the future, you'll be shocked at what humans will be able to do in the future. But so never forget that and what is the proof that you're a fractal of God? Your life path number. Okay. Because all of those numbers, they're just one of the pieces of the whole, the zero, right? One, two, three, four, five. Add them all together and you get zero. It equals zero in energy. Now, without you, okay, so maybe you're a life path 5 or you're a life path 7 or 11 or whatever, you know, without you, the sphere is not whole. Think of it that way. That's how important you are, because without you, without your number, then it's not a zero, right? Because the zero can't be zero if it's only got one through 8, but number 9 is missing. Or the sphere of the zero can't be complete if it's only got, all the numbers, but 3 is missing or 2 is missing. So without you, the sphere is not complete. So never forget that you are extremely powerful. We are just limited because of our perception and because the veil is so thick. um, we think we're in separation. We don't realize how powerful we are, and that we are basically God's eyes and ears in the third dimension. So when you see it that way, it helps you to remove yourself from everything, and you're seeing the world through God's eyes, right? Because you are God, or you're a fractal of God, and you're seeing the world through God's eyes, and you are at a higher level. This takes you into the 5D consciousness, seeing it from the director's point of view. So um yeah, so signs that God is with you, because like I said, God is always with you. You are God, but then signs of your divinity, um and source energy, which is the larger chunk of God source. This would be, so like you're a fractal of God, but then we have, source energy, which is a larger chunk of God in the ninth dimension. And signs that God is there you're in God's presence, a larger source, a larger chunk of source energy would be zeros. Like if you see, whenever you see 0, 0, 0, that's a huge indication that God is with you. Zeros next to any number are going to indicate that God is with you in that area. Okay, so for instance, if you see 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, God is with you, helping you to guide you to become a better version of yourself, or not a better version of yourself, but to become who you were meant to really be. Because the 1 is about the individual, right? God is with you at that time, helping to guide you into that area. If you see 0 next to 2, that's an indication that God is with you. He is in your you're in his presence, and he is with you, and he is helping you in the area of, partnerships and peace and balance. So, but anytime you see zeros, that's huge indication that God is, you're in his presence, larger part of God, right? Source energy is with you. And, but then there's also other signs and symbols as well. So we're just looking at numbers here. But yeah, zero is definitely a huge indication of that. Um, now, so yeah, I mean, oh, another thing I wanted to mention is that, um, when we look at the numbers, right? When we bring the numbers together, 1 through 9, um, it's almost like it's think of it as like a line, right? 1 through 9. And we're taking the numbers and we're putting them all together again to create the sphere. It creates the zero, right? If you take that string and go like this, it creates the zero. So the 1 and the 9 are right next to each other. And these are kind of, if you think about it, they're kind of like the beginning of the sphere and the end of the sphere. Okay, in terms of numerology and energy, it would be like the beginning of the sphere and the end. And in reality, the sphere doesn't really end and it doesn't really begin. But if you put them together again, it creates a zero, and it's kind of like the beginning and the ending. So in this sense, 1 and 9, people with the 1 and the 9 energy, okay, like life path ones, life path number nines, or people with strong 1 and 9 energy in their chart, these people are going to have the strongest connection to God because of this. That doesn't mean that they're better than the other numbers, okay? Because remember, and there's no such thing as hierarchy in the universe. It's not like one thing is better than the other. It's just different, okay? The other numbers have a different function. But when we think of 1 and 9, because they are the end, they are the beginning of the zero, the end point, and the beginning of the sphere, right? When we take it, we string it up, they're right next to each other, even though they're the furthest apart. But they are going to be the most connected to God, source energy. And when we see this, we have number one, all variations of the life path one, number one, um, are 10. You'll see a lot of humanitarians that will be life path number nines, or you'll see a lot of entrepreneurs that have changed the world, like Steve Jobs. He was like a life path one, right? A lot of them will choose to do good things with that energy, but then there's some people that will choose to do, bad things with that energy. But it's all up to them as how they want to choose how to use it. And my life path number is a 6, regardless of the method. But a person who I think might be my twin flame has also a 6 on one method, but 33 in another method. All numbers added together. Okay, well, that can be a sign of being a twin flame. If you're remember when you ask these questions, if you're even thinking about it, like, is this a sign? Is this a sign? Like, remember, if you're even thinking like this might be a sign, it's probably a sign. Like, like 90% of the time, if you're even thinking, you're wondering, is this a sign? Just assume that 90% of the time it's going to be a sign. Like, because that wouldn't have even like popped into your head if it wasn't a sign being given to you by the universe. Like, you wouldn't have never even thought in a million years that, is this a sign? So if you're even thinking that, it's probably a sign. 100%. Okay. Not, I would say not 100%. I would say 90% of the time, it's probably a sign that, yes, that is a sign, or whatever it is that you're wondering about. Okay. Um, oh, thank you so much, AJ. That's very nice of you. God bless you. Thank you. And by the way, I think there were some other people that sent me super chats too, and I missed it. So those people, God bless you. I'm so sorry that I missed your super chats, but God bless you. You're very sweet, and sending you all blessings, sending all of you guys blessings. But so if I missed your super chat, I'm so sorry. Just know that I love you. But we're coming out of that now. We're coming out of this where people are starting to awaken, and they're starting to realize that, that, yeah, I mean, putting these people on, elites, people with money, people with prestige, famous people, putting them on a pedestal, that there is no reason to do that. And if anything, it should be the opposite. I mean, it should be the opposite of putting them on a pedestal, because there's just a lot of them have done really dark things, and they're no better than anybody else. And we are all we are starting to become aware of our power, that we really are, no matter how much money we have or fame or whatever, we're all fractals of God. We're all here, just the pieces of the sphere coming back together again to help create that sphere again. That's what evolution is. We're trying to get it back together again. There are some beings that want the sphere to remain broken, that want the sphere, the pieces to be remain separate, and for us to be in separation. And because, you know, for whatever reason, that's just part of the game, but and I talk about some of these dark entities in another live that I did. So I'll link that one below in the description. It's that live is called "Who Really Controls the World." So you can find out who those entities are. But um, the whole point is that we don't want to be separate. We want to come back together. That's why love is so important, because it is the glue that brings all the pieces and all of the numbers back together again. And there is no such thing as hierarchy, one person being better than the other. We're all equal, right? So, oh, thank you so much, Tyler. Oh, that's so sweet of you. That's really nice. You guys are so generous. God bless you guys. Very sweet. Oh, I love you guys. Well, anyways, I'm going to end it here. And, like I said, if there's any questions that I missed, you can put them in the replay after this gets uploaded in the replay. And I will try to go back and answer any questions that I didn't miss. Okay. But, anyways, thank you guys for being with me today, and sending you all lots of love and blessings. You know what? To claim the God energy, comment 000 down below in the description box, or in the comments below. Comment 000 to claim that God source energy, that you are a piece of God, that you're a fractal of God. Hit the like button. Okay, that really helps to get this out there, helps with the algorithm. Share this with another person that you think really needs to hear this message. And I would love to have you subscribe and to become part of this family. If you haven't, if you haven't become a part already, I would love to have you subscribe. And if you want to find out more information about me, you can head on over to my website, starsalignwithcarmen.com. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I love you, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.